Nvidia has stepped up their game, or so they want you to believe. Now, utilizing Turing architecture, combining RT and tensor cores with mainstream SIMs, they've made real-time ray tracing possible, and you can't really deny that they've shown it proven in real time, right? So insane computational workloads now being processed on demand is pretty incredible. We discussed ray tracing, by the way, in great detail in this video right here. But in this video, we're going to summarize what we've learned from Nvidia's recent keynotes and forecast the gaming climate, which is still a bit unknown with this next generation of GPUs. So the hype is real, and Jensen Huang did a great job pumping the audience with elaborate terminology and hyperbole, like they were hiding behind something. It's his job to bolster support for his company after all, I can't knock him for that. He took over an hour though to finally discuss gaming applications, seems fit for an event like Gamescom, in Germany. He discussed supercomputers, super resolutions, super everything, but we care about the next-gen card performance with respect to gaming, that's why people are there. So an original statement from the Nvidia CEO was something along the lines of RTX yields twice the frame rate of 1080 Ti. He actually said it right here, but we weren't really sure to which RTX card he was referring, and he didn't actually address frame rates or percent performance yields with respect to exact titles that they showed later on in the keynote. He definitely teased us for quite a while, and then he brought in the Shadow of Tomb Raider and began toggling RTX on and off. RTX is that form of real-time ray tracing, which would be near impossible to replicate on current Pascal hardware. The low frame rate would make it basically unplayable, and that's why this is such a big deal, but we didn't really talk about frame rates at all. So the big play here with the new architecture appears to be with respect to shadows, and that's the whole point of ray tracing to begin with, right? Accurate shadow interpretation. No longer are we stuck with the dense shadows with fixed boundaries. Light scattering and tracing can brighten rooms with single area light sources, reducing stress on current rasterization techniques. And so realism intensifies, that's the gist of it. But after the Battlefield 5 showcase, Jensen finally revealed the Turing gaming cards, whatever you want to call them, the RTX lineup. The first was the RTX 2080 Ti, boasting 11 gigabytes of GDDR6, which we knew, 2 8-pin supplemental power connectors, and 2 fans. Supposedly the card is 1/5 as loud as the Founders Edition 1080 Ti. If that's true, then Nvidia's swerve from blower-style reference cards is well worth it. Other metrics, 78 trillion RTX ops, we'll discuss that later, and a price tag of $999. Yeah, he originally said $499. We all thought that's what he was talking about, but you know, marketing hype, it was actually misleading in a sense. Turns out the $499 card he was referring to was the RTX 2070. This is definitely more expensive than last year's equivalent offerings, but Nvidia is touting the quote, largest computational leap ever in computer graphics. So you can actually pre-order these cards starting today, and they'll hit the shelves sometime around September 20th, but that's really about where the presentation came to a halt. I was very much hoping Nvidia would dive more into the gaming aspects, like the gaming performance of these cards, but apart from showing the ray tracing on versus off for a majority of the keynote, frame rates were otherwise concealed. Now this may have to do with the fact that RT compatibility brings with it a sharp rate spike in overall workloads that would lower FPS overall to comparable Pascal levels, and that's my theory. I think they didn't want to talk about frame rates because when all these things are activated, these cards are supposedly really good at, the frame rate deltas just really aren't there, leading me to believe that this is more of a real-world, improvement in terms of how realistic the games look versus an overall FPS jump or the ability to turn on other things like anti-aliasing and handle those with ease. I almost felt the presentation was slightly just bland. I felt like it was forced at times. I think Jensen Huang was really trying to make himself sound excited, and that came across with a very sour taste to many people watching. I was, analyzing the Twitch chat throughout the whole live stream, and it just didn't come across as genuine to me the way that previous keynotes had. And I think a lot of that has to do with the vast change in architecture and how there's now going to be a shift more towards the way the game looks from a ray tracing perspective, from a lighting and shadow technique perspective, versus an overall FPS jump that we might see with similar settings. Because there was no even cut comparison between the two. Not that I expect Nvidia to go out and release all the specs they have during a keynote, but it just seems like they're keeping something on the DL, and I don't like that. That's my theory, at least, since these new GPUs are drastically different in their designs and offerings. Real-world gaming performance may not translate the same way we saw Pascal's over previous gen Maxwell architecture. Remember, Pascal is extremely efficient as well for what it offered, and this 2080 Ti they're showing here is boasting 2 8-pin connectors, meaning that power draw and efficiency probably aren't their top priorities this time around. So we could be looking at a more niche visual improvement with respect to shadows in certain games this time around over raw graphical horsepower. Why else would they stress the importance of a different benchmark standard, right? 78 trillion RTX ops, that doesn't mean anything to anybody because we've never seen that metric before. And that was something we mentioned earlier, right, that Jensen Huang had brought up. It might explain why they've shied away from mainstream metrics. Only time will tell, but this is how I see it. This is what we know so far. It was kind of limited in scope, right? The entire keynote was very centered on shadows and not necessarily the performance bump and everything else that we usually expect between other architectures. So in closing, and I'm just going to say it because I don't think many others will, I don't really expect the raw performance jump to exceed that of Pascal's margins over Maxwell in general games. We'll see RTX support in the future, sure, but for now, real-world gaming benefits have been kept oddly quiet. Smells like someone wants to keep something covered. What do you guys think? Check the comments down below, leave one, I'll be sure to reply to as many as I can. Give this video a thumbs up if that was cool, thumbs down for the opposite, click that red subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one. This is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.